A scribe sits in the rubble of a half-rebuilt Jerusalem. The cold wind blowing dust over cracked stones. The real question of 1 Chronicles isn't, who are these people? It's this. What is the author trying to put back together? The heavy winds blowing through the Kidron Valley are cold. The builders are tired. Their hands cracked from clearing the charred debris of a destroyed city. They need to know exactly who they are before they can stack another stone. And to remind them of their shattered identity, the chronicler has to reach back to those first 9 chapters. He has to use a specific word that modern readers skip right over. You are standing in the middle of a life that feels like a demolished city, staring at a foundation that did not hold the weight you placed on it. You can feel the sharp, broken edges of a relationship that fractured, or the heavy, suffocating ash of a failure you cannot seem to outrun. When the floor drops out from under you, the first casualty is usually not your circumstances. It is your identity. You start to define yourself by the wreckage around your feet. You look at the ruined walls. You feel the cold wind blowing through the empty spaces. And you assume that the architect has abandoned the site. That is exactly where the returning exiles are standing when they hear this scroll read for the first time. If you are in a season where your history feels too shattered to be useful, the chronicler's strategy is the exact medicine your soul requires. The people listening to this scroll have just returned from 70 years of exile in Babylon. When a community loses everything, their homes, their crown, their independence, they forget who they are. They start to believe that their punishment has erased their calling. When you read the book of Chronicles, you are reading the ultimate manual for how to survive a catastrophe that was your own fault. The people of Israel knew they brought the fire on their own heads. They knew the Babylonian battering rams were the direct result of their own idolatry. They carried the agonizing guilt of knowing they had squandered their inheritance. And when you carry that kind of guilt, it is terrifyingly easy to convince yourself that your failures have permanently disqualified you from the presence of God. But the chronicler refuses to let them drown in the dirt of their own mistakes. He knows that if they believe their identity was destroyed in the exile, they will never have the strength to lift a single stone to rebuild the city. He forces them to look away from the rubble and look at the roster. Your identity is not a monument you construct. It is an inheritance you receive. The Babylonian fire burned the massive cedar beams of the palace, but it could not burn the covenant. The exiles stripped away their political independence, but it could not sever the sacred thread that stretched all the way back to the dirt of Eden. They are still the priests of the Most High God. They are standing in a city with no walls. The throne of David is empty. The gold and the glory of their ancestors are gone, even if the sanctuary is currently a pile of blackened rocks. To prove this to a grieving people, the author has to summarize all 9 chapters of names. He has to tell them what the endless list of ancestors actually means for their survival. And to do it, he anchors the entire genealogy on a single, highly administrative Hebrew word hiding in plain sight. 1 Chronicles chapter 9, verse 1. The scribe finally reaches the end of the massive list. He has just spent 8 long chapters tracing the bloodlines from the dirt of Eden all the way to the rubble of Jerusalem. He has documented the tribes, the kings, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the priests. And before he pivots to the death of Saul, he summarizes the entire sprawling project in one breath. He writes, "So all Israel was recorded by genealogies, and behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel." The phrase the English translators render as recorded by genealogies or enrolled hinges on a very specific Hebrew verb. It is the word yakaz. It is an administrative term, but its usage in the ancient text is highly concentrated. It appears almost exclusively in the books written after the Babylonian fire chronicles. Ezra and Nehemiah. They are a shattered community, looking at the wreckage of their own history, carrying the heavy, silent fear that their covenant with God is permanently broken. Its root means to reckon one's descent, to establish pedigree, to be legally registered in the archives. It is not a casual roll call taken in a town square. It is a legally binding ledger. We see the terrifying weight of this exact word in Ezra chapter 2. When the exiles first return to the ruined city, a group of men claiming to be priests step forward to serve. But when the officials search for their names in the Yakas, the official register, the names cannot be found, because their ink is missing from the heavy parchment. The men are legally classified as unclean. They are stripped of their priestly garments. They are explicitly barred from eating the sacred food or approaching the smoking altar. Without the Yakas, you have no inheritance. Without it, you are a ghost in the community. That administrative route changes everything about how you read the beginning of 1 Chronicles. When the chronicler dips his reed pen and meticulously writes out hundreds of names, he is not giving a history lesson. He is constructing a legal defense. He is looking at a generation that survived the crushing weight of foreign empires, a people who feel like spiritual orphans, and he is handing them their birthright. The 9 chapters are not a cemetery of dead ancestors. They are a deed of ownership to a promised future. The author is telling they are asking the most terrifying question a nation can ask. Are we still his? The author of Chronicles does not offer them a theological essay. Shattered exiles that their names are still written in the book. The covenant held. The bloodline survived. The legal right to approach the altar has not been revoked by their catastrophic failures. They are fully authorized to rebuild the house. But possessing the legal right to the sanctuary is only half the battle. Because the chronicler is about to reveal that the temple they are trying to rebuild was never just a building project. It was an unfinished obsession that consumed the greatest king who ever lived. David stands in a house of cedar. He looks out the window. He sees a tent of woven goat hair. The king of Israel sleeps behind thick wooden walls. The Ark of the Covenant sits under a canvas tarp, flapping in the wind. He calls Nathan the prophet. He makes a vow. He will build a house. The word of the Lord comes in the night. The answer is no. You have shed too much blood. You have fought too many wars. Your hands are stained red from decades of combat. You will not stack the stones for my sanctuary. Most ancient kings would walk away. Most monarchs would pivot to a secular monument. They would carve their own names into a mountainside. David pivots to the stockpile. He does not build the walls. He gathers the inventory. He offers them an anchor. When you read the 9 chapters of names in that context, the rhythm of the text shifts. He commands the stonecutters. They swing the heavy iron hammers. They cut the massive white limestone from the quarries. He gathers the bronze. He melts it down until the sheer weight breaks the scales. He hauls the cedar logs from Lebanon. You can smell the thick, sharp sap of the timber filling the streets of Jerusalem. 100,000 talents of gold, 1,000,000 talents of silver. Iron nails piled in massive black heaps for the heavy wooden doors. He gathers the onyx stones. He collects the antimony. He heaps up stones of various colors. Every precious jewel he can find in the ancient world. He piles in the dirt of the city. He strips his own personal treasury. He gives his private gold. He gives his private silver. This is not a state-funded infrastructure project. It is a bleeding, desperate act of worship. He organizes the Levites, 38,000 men. He divides them into divisions, 4,000 gatekeepers, 4,000 musicians. He tunes the harps. He assigns the lyres. He orchestrates the crashing of the bronze cymbals. The denial is not a rejection. It is a redirection. David is a man of war, aggressively preparing for a reign of peace. He calls his son Solomon. He hands him the scroll. It contains the exact measurements, the weight of the golden lampstands. It stops sounding like a registry. It starts sounding like a heartbeat. The list reaches all the way back to the dirt of Eden to prove. The design of the golden chariot of the cherubim. David dies. Solomon builds. 400 years pass. The Babylonians arrive. The gold is stripped. The bronze is smashed. The cedar is burned to white ash. The temple falls. But the chronicler knows something the Babylonian commanders did not. You can burn the cedar, you cannot burn the calling. The exiles returning to the rubble are not starting from scratch. They are stepping back into David's unfinished obsession. They are picking up the exact same blueprint. And the reason their story matters to yours is hiding in the ashes. A genealogist wrote 9 chapters of names in the dirt of a ruined city, and a shattered people found their legal right to exist. A flawed king was stripped of his darkest failures on the parchment, and an archetype of pure worship emerged from the text. The first monarch treated the sacred like the common, and the crown was torn from his bloodline forever. A warrior purchased a threshing floor in the middle of a plague, and the geographic center of God's presence was locked into the earth. A father was told he could not stack the stones of the sanctuary, and he spent his final breaths stockpiling the iron. That the thread has not been snapped. The genealogy is not a record of the past. It is a defense of their future. And the gold, so someone else could. A foreign empire burned the cedar walls to white ash, and the calling of the priesthood survived the fire. Same history, same blueprint, but maybe the part that stays. With me, most is the yakas, the administrative ledger, the heavy scroll of names unrolled in the rubble of Jerusalem. When you look at the people listed in those 9 chapters, you are not looking at a genealogy of perfect obedience. You are looking at idolaters, murderers, cowards, and exiles. And yet, their names are still written in the ink. The Babylonian chains could drag them away from the altar, but the empire could not erase them from the book. The list is not a memorial for the dead. It is a deed of ownership for the living. If you are in a season where you are staring at the wreckage of something you broke, wear your failures. Feel like a Babylonian fire that has permanently disqualified you from the presence of God. The chronicler is speaking directly to you. The exile does not cancel the covenant. The collapse of the throne does not mean the architect has. If you have ever felt like your history is too fragmented to be used, or that your failures have disqualified you from the promises you were given, abandon the site. The ruins around your feet are not the end of your story. They are simply the place where the altar must be rebuilt. And may the God who keeps the record of every shattered exile walk with you through your own ruins and show you that the foundation under the ashes is still holding. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels disqualified by their own history. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. 1 Chronicles is diagnosing something deep inside you. It was written for a people convinced their story was over. The smell of charred cedar from a burned temple still lingers in the dirt. He unrolls a rough parchment scroll to prove it isn't over. The scribe has to tell the story of Israel's greatest king all over again. But he is going to tell it differently. To see what he is doing, you have to lay the scroll of Chronicles right next to the scrolls of Samuel and Kings. You have to compare the texts, line by line. And when you do, you realize the author left something massive on the cutting room floor. We have 2 histories, 2 accounts of the same kingdom, 2 lenses on the same monarchy. The books of Samuel and Kings are the prophetic lens. They read like a gritty, unvarnished war diary. They show the blood on the stone floor. They show the rust on the crown. They tell you exactly how the nation fractured. 1 Chronicles is the priestly lens. It was written centuries later. It looks at the exact same events. It covers the exact same kings. It spans the exact same timeline. But it edits the footage. Read the scroll of Samuel. You see David's spectacular rise. You see his catastrophic fall. You watch him pace the flat roof of his palace in the evening air. You see the affair with Bathsheba. You read the sealed letter ordering the murder of Uriah. You see the civil war that rips his family apart. You hear the screams of his rebellious son, Absalom, hanging by his hair from the branches of an oak tree. Now read 1 Chronicles. He dips a reed pen into dark ink. He does not write a prayer. He does not record a prophecy. You see the rise. You see the victories. You see the kingdom secured. And then, silence. The affair is gone. The murder is erased. The civil war is completely missing from the record. It is as if someone took a knife and cut the darkest chapters out of the parchment. Most people read this omission as religious propaganda. They assume the chronicler is whitewashing the past. They think he is covering up the ugly parts of the royal family tree to make David look like a flawless, glittering hero. The missing ink is not a cover-up. It is a recalibration. The author of Kings wrote his history while the smoke was still rising from the ashes of Jerusalem. His audience was sitting in exile in Babylon. They were tasting the dust of a foreign empire, asking, why? Did this happen to us? Kings answers that question. It points the finger. It shows the slow, painful timeline of rebellion that finally brought the Babylonian battering rams to their gates. The author of Chronicles is writing to a different audience. The exile is over. The people are back in the land. Their hands are calloused from hauling heavy limestone blocks to rebuild the ruined walls. They know exactly why they were punished. They have felt the heavy iron chains of captivity. They do not need another diagnosis of their disease. They need a blueprint for their recovery. He writes a name, and then another, and then another. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared. They do not need a history of how they broke the covenant. They need a reminder of the ideal. They need to see what God originally intended the kingdom to be, so they know what to build in the wreckage. So the chronicler takes his reed pen. He sweeps past the personal sins of David. He strips away the palace intrigue, but he does not ignore failure completely. He zeroes in on one specific kind of failure, and the detail he chooses to highlight changes how you read the entire book. David wears a linen ephod. He dances in the dirt before a wooden box covered in gold. He organizes the singers. He assigns the gatekeepers. He sets the rhythm of the bronze cymbals, the harps, and the lyres. He is a king, but he does not move like a king. He moves like a priest. The author of Kings shows you David the warrior, covered in the dust of battle. The author of Chronicles shows you David the worshipper, covered in the smoke of incense. He gathers the massive cedar logs from Lebanon. He cuts the heavy limestone blocks. He stockpiles the bronze, the iron, the silver, and the gold until the numbers become impossible to count. David's ultimate purpose in this scroll is not to conquer a territory. 500 names. 9 entire chapters of nothing but names. Genealogies and bloodlines stretching back to the beginning of the world. It is to prepare a house. The omission of his darkest sins is not a cover-up. It is a consecration. The chronicler is creating an archetype. He is showing a broken, weeping group of exiles what a true leader looks like. A king whose heart is entirely consumed with the presence of God. He is stripping away the political noise to reveal the spiritual core. But the chronicler does not erase all of David's failures. He leaves exactly one catastrophic sin on the page. The census. David counts the fighting men of Israel. A plague sweeps across the land. An angel with a drawn iron sword stands over the city of Jerusalem. The shadow of the blade falls across a specific piece of dirt, the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. David falls on his face. He buys the threshing floor. He builds an altar. The fire falls. Why does the chronicler keep this sin when he erased the affair with Bathsheba? Because the affair with Bathsheba resulted in a grave. The census at the threshing floor resulted in the temple. That specific piece of dirt, purchased in the middle of a plague, becomes the exact geographic coordinate where the Holy of Holies will eventually stand. The sin is not included to document his weakness. It is included to establish the altar. That is how the first book of Chronicles begins. Most people read these first 9 chapters, if they read them at all, as an obstacle. They see everything in 1 Chronicles is pointing away from the throne and toward the sanctuary. The chronicler knows that Israel's survival does not depend on who wears the crown. It depends on whether God still dwells in the room. And to understand why that presence was lost in the first place, you have to look at the autopsy, he writes, for the very first king. You have to look at a single Hebrew word written in the blood of Mount Gilboa. The chronicler does not just ignore David's personal failures. He writes a highly theological autopsy for David's predecessor. 1 Chronicles chapter 10 recounts the death of King Saul on the bloody, arrow-strewn slopes of Mount Gilboa. The author of Samuel gives a long, complex, political explanation for why Saul's dynasty collapsed over several decades. The author of Chronicles sweeps all of that away. He dips his reed pen and boils the entire collapse of the first king down to a single, devastating sentence. 1 Chronicles 10:13. So Saul died for his unfaithfulness, which he committed against the Lord. The word the English translators render as unfaithfulness or transgression here is the Hebrew ma'al. It is a word that carries a very specific, almost terrifying weight in the ancient text. A tedious database of ancient ancestors. A genealogical graveyard that has to be skimmed as quickly as possible to get to the actual story of David and Goliath. The noun form and its verbal root do not describe a simple mistake. They do not describe a generic moral slip-up. The root of ma'al specifically describes a breach of trust regarding something sacred. It means to act treacherously by taking, defiling, or treating as common something that belongs exclusively to God. It is a violation of the holy. If seeing the ancient language peel back the layers of these stories is opening up the text for you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, the chronicler looks at Saul. He is looking at a man who sought out a medium in the dark, who usurped the priestly role by offering unauthorized sacrifices, who refused to execute the ban on the Amalekites, keeping the spoils for himself. We see this exact same word, ma'al, used in Joshua chapter 7. Achan takes the devoted gold and silver from the smoldering ruins of Jericho and buries them in the dirt under his tent. It is a trespass of sacred boundaries. That root changes everything. When the chronicler uses ma'al to diagnose Saul's death, he is sending a profound message to the exiles rebuilding Jerusalem. Saul did not lose his crown. But if you look closer at the people hearing this scroll read for the first time, at the physical ruins, they are standing in you, because he was a weak military commander. He did not lose his dynasty because of bad political alliances. He lost everything because he treated the holy presence of God as a casual accessory. The fall of Saul is not a political tragedy. It is a priestly judgment. The chronicler is telling the shattered community that their survival has never been based on military strength. It has always been based on their reverence for the sacred, and that's strict. Unyielding demand for reverence is exactly what dictates how the chronicler records the rest of David's reign. The wooden box rests in the shadows. It sits in a quiet house on a hill in Kiriath Jearim. It waits for decades in the dark. Saul ignores it. David goes to find it. David brings the Ark of the Covenant up the mountain to Jerusalem. He pitches a tent. He organizes the priests. He assigns the gatekeepers. The narrative accelerates. The details multiply. 86 men from the sons of Shemaiah, 120 from the sons of Joel, 212 from the sons of Asaph. Bronze cymbals clash. Wood lyres hum. 10-string harps ring through the thin mountain air. Bulls are slaughtered on the dirt. Fat burns on the altar. Thick smoke fills the sky over the city. The author of Kings gives you a few verses about the music. The chronicler gives you entire chapters. Start to see something the skimming completely misses. The names are not a database. They are a rescue operation. David does not fortify the stone walls. He fortifies the sacred worship. He stockpiles iron nails for the heavy wooden doors. He weighs out pure gold for the lampstands. He measures the bronze for the washing basins. He maps out the outer courtyards. He traces the wings of the golden cherubim. He draws the exact blueprint for the Holy of Holies. He hands the scroll to his son, Solomon. This blueprint is not a construction manual. It is a spiritual inheritance. In the Scroll of Kings, David's final words to his son are a political hit list. He tells Solomon exactly who to assassinate to secure his crown. He talks about old grudges and the blood of war dried on his leather belt. In the Scroll of Chronicles, the hit list is entirely gone. David's final words are a massive public prayer. He blesses the entire congregation. He hands Solomon the exact measurements of the sanctuary. He tells his son to be strong, to not be terrified, and to build the house. A throne is political. A temple is sacred. A crown can be taken by a foreign empire. An altar can only be abandoned by a careless priest. The Babylonian iron took their king. The Babylonian fire took their cedar palaces. But the vocation of the priesthood survives the fire. The call to worship outlives the collapse of the monarchy. The rough limestone blocks under the feet of the returning exiles are waiting.